Hello, welcome to Post Colonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and today I'll be talking about a slightly different topic, and that is stagflation in academia. Now, stagflation is an economic term, right, which combines stagnation and inflation together. Until the 1980s, it was believed that an economy could not stagnate and have inflation at the same time. But in the 1980s, then suddenly economies stagnated, but also had inflation. And hence the term stagflation came into being. And obviously it's a complex term and probably beyond my expertise to explain it. But here is how I'm using stagflation within the context of academia and humanistic disciplines. So what I'm calling stagflation is this idea of overproduction of doctoral students, because each research university here in the United States constantly keeps recruiting and keeps producing more doctoral students and candidates, with the hope that each one of them will go and get a good job. And that's what we try to teach our graduate students and prepare them, publish, and do this and do that, have a good CV, and you'll probably get a job interview. But what makes it into stagflation is that while the number of people getting PhDs is increasing, the number of good jobs is decreasing at the same time. So universities, instead of hiring more tenure-track professors in humanities, are increasingly replacing those lines with adjunct workers, with lecturers who are not tenure-track, who are contract labor, and with the labor of graduate students. So there is this dichotomy between what we claim to offer to aspiring current or future graduate students and where the market is headed. So we know in the last 20 or 30 years, the number of tenure-track hires has been constantly decreasing, and it is being replaced with contract labor and with the labor of lecturers in non-tenure-track positions. And it's happening at the same time when the number of PhDs that we are producing has drastically increased. What are the consequences of this? Now think of it in human terms. We prepare our graduate students, they work hard, they deprive themselves, they give their labor to our department. They're the ones who teach the first year writing courses, right? And then at the end, when they're done, with the hope that they will get a good job, a stable job, they are entering a market in which those jobs do not exist. And since they have learned to be responsible, instead of thinking critically about the system, what most of us and most of them end up doing is blaming themselves, right? And so they think maybe they're not good enough, maybe they have not done enough, maybe they are not from a good program, they are not from a good school. So what I would like to highlight here is that yes, it is okay to take responsibility, right? Because that enables us to do better work, maybe become competitive. But part of it is also to keep in mind that the system is stacked against you. You're entering the humanities job market at a time when the number of people entering the job market is way higher than number of quality jobs being offered by universities. So you're entering the market at a time where the universities, ironically, research ones, must constantly produce more PhDs. That's what helps them keep their status as a research one. But the same universities at the same time are hiring more non-tenure track positions. Why are they doing that? Obviously because it's cheaper, right? They can hire a lecturer, and I have nothing against lecturers. They all tend to be great scholars and teachers. But they can hire them for less money. Their positions are precarious because they can be fired at will, right? So then they have this captive exploited labor. So if the universities themselves are hiring more and more adjunct workers to fill their courses, more and more lecturers and not tenure track positions, then the problem is not with you, right? As an aspiring candidate, you have done your work, you have published, you have prepared yourself. The problem is with the system. It's a systemic problem. And it's even worse in countries like Pakistan and India, right? Where you get hired and then they tell you, here, you teach 5 courses, you teach 4 courses, you'll be here for 8 hours a day. I mean, it's even more stringent, right? And vindictive in so many ways, the practice. So if you are thinking of going into humanities and going to get a PhD, yes, prepare yourselves, go to a good school, do all the right things, but also keep in mind that more than 75% of the time, if you do not get an interview or a job offer, it's not because you're not good enough. It's because the system itself is unjust and stacked against you, and is increasingly replacing long-term tenure track positions with short-term adjunct hires or non-tenure track hires. That's the reason. I mean, there are departments that take pride in it. I know one department in which people were thrilled that they were able to hire 2 non-tenure track people, right? Because that's what the universities are giving them. And so that's the kind of field you will enter. That's why I call it stagflation. There is overproduction on one level and reduced possibilities on the other, right? So the demand is far less than the production. So how do you cope with it? You either reduce the production, become more selective, which is not really the right path, or you increase the demand. Previously, a lot of our doctoral students, when they graduated, there were various levels at which they could be absorbed at tenure track jobs, right? So the community colleges mostly had tenure track positions. So some of the students would go and work there and serve the communities. Liberal arts colleges had more tenure track positions, so some people would go and get jobs there. And then beyond that, the research comprehensives and research ones. Now, if you look at community colleges' job ads on Chronicle of Higher Education, not many of them are hiring tenure track positions. They only want visiting assistant professors, lecturers, or part-time adjunct workers. And why are they doing that? Because if you are adjunct, they don't have to give you health care. They don't have to give you anything other than the salary that they give you per course. If you're a lecturer, maybe they'll have to give you health care, right? But they will overload you with coursework so they can extract more labor from you. And if you go beyond that as a tenure track professor, there are tenure track positions being offered by liberal arts colleges that have a 5/5 teaching load. So I just want you to know this, that I know, me included, we all tend to blame ourselves and say, maybe I'm not good enough, I've not worked hard, I don't have good materials. But start also thinking that the system in which you are trying to get an education and then hoping to get a job itself is unjust and is stacked against you, right? And if you know that, maybe then your priorities will be different. And also maybe you will build lateral solidarities, material or digital, with other people who are fighting to make a difference, who are fighting for more rights for academic and cognitive workers, for knowledge workers. Maybe it will encourage you to explore other options outside of academia, right? In IT, in research, and so that you don't end up at the end of the day with a doctoral degree, having written a dissertation, having worked hard for 5 to 6 years, and not making any headway into the job market. So keep this in mind, and I hope this is slightly useful to all of those who are either working towards your PhDs in humanities or are planning to apply to PhD programs and start your doctoral work. It's exciting work. You'll learn a lot. You'll make a lot of friends. But do keep in mind where the market is now and where it's headed and how best to tackle that when you get there. But if you're unsuccessful in landing a good tenure track job, then how to figure out something else to do with your education and with your talent. That's all. Thank you so much. I hope you're taking care of each other. I hope you're staying safe. I am visiting my in-laws and now staying with my wife Jenny. So I'm at a happy place. So I will now see you next time. Until then, as always, peace and love.